Excuse me. I heard a variety of these Altoids have been recalled. Are these good to go?
We got rid of all the bad ones last week, so they're good.
Well, sorry to bother you.
No bother at all, man. It's really, really important to be really aware of what you put into your body.
Hey, that's what I always say.
Me too.
Up top. Well, see you later.
Well, Tony, everything came back normal. You are as healthy as a healthy black man. Okay, now let's inject you with this vaccine and you'll...
Whoa. What's that?
Oh, it's just a normal vaccine. That's nothing to worry about. If you just roll up your sleeve, we'll just get this show.
Whoa, wait. Can we talk about this? Look, I'm not some anti-science weirdo. I just like to ask questions and know what's going into my body.
Ask questions.
Yeah.
You're not one of those crazy conspiracy theorists that I read about online, right?
Oh, no. Look, I ask questions about everything that pertains to my health and safety. Maybe I'll get the jab, but I just like to know what's in it. Has it been peer-reviewed?
Hello, this is Dr. Lewis. I need immediate backup in exam room 7. We've got a conspiracy theorist in here. He's armed with an open mind and he's very dangerous. Help! He's really fast!
Trump was fast.
Wait. You're skeptical because of Trump's involvement?
I mean, well, no, Trump, no, MAGA.
What? I totally understand that. Why didn't you lead with it? Oh, yeah, false alarm. False alarm, everybody, false alarm. Look, I get it, okay? Let's just get you down to bill pay and get you on out of here. Look, I'm so sorry about all of that prison break, running down the hallway thing, but you know what? You can't be too careful. There's a lot of crazies out there. A lot of crazies.
Okay, so I just go that way and make a right?
Yeah, that's what you, yeah. Mm-hmm. Have a good day.
Thanks, Doc. Bye.
Fauci, when he was sitting there, that SOB knew for a fact that that virus came from the Wuhan lab. He knew that because he had funded the gain-of-function research in that lab, and he had already begun to design a cover-up. And we know that from the emails he sent to a group of researchers, academics, trying to get their support to push that come from nature theory. And that's the biggest lie of omission in American history. Because if he had simply owned up to the fact that that thing came from the lab, we could have pressured the Chinese to give us the genome sequence, which would have allowed us to design an effective vaccine rather than the crap we wound up getting. And again, Trump got lied to about that, not just by Fauci, but by Pfizer, the drug company.
In what way?
They didn't disclose the side effects of that. And they weren't clear with him. They made him think that it was a true vaccine when it's not. It's mRNA technology. And, you know, I worked with a guy named Dr. Robert Malone. You have him on the show sometime.
We had him.
Yeah. It's like the way... I mean, Malone was out there beforehand, but I had him on Steve Bannon's War Room when I was guest hosting. He sat kind of like you and me are sitting, Patrick. And we talked about all this and wound up writing a 3-part series in the Washington Times about how the universal vax policy would basically spawn mutations that would be more lethal. I mean, you don't have to get too much in that. But my point is that day, that January 28th day, was a very significant one, overlooked in the history of the pandemic and in American history.
Watching the world burn, watching the world burn. September 6th, 2025. Let's get into it. I want you to stick around to the end of the video because we're going to do a reading. There was an excellent post on the evils of the CDC, especially under that demon Fauci. And we're going to go through the whole thing, and that's the theme of the whole video. But before we get into that, we got a couple of little items. We're learning a lot more about the Democrat mafia. They were, through Act Blue, and also, of course, with USAID, they were reaping huge amounts of profit from child sex trafficking and the drugs. I mean, they were right in bed with the cartels. So they're following the money. But once again, I'll point out, hey, Pam Bondi, I haven't seen anybody prosecuted yet. Has anybody been prosecuted? Yeah, we hear about all of the evidence that the Trump administration is finding, or that, Kash Patel, and by the way, Dan Bongino and Kash Patel, they've been putting out more posts. It seems like they're doing a really good job arresting people. And there was, I finally heard about one conviction. So one person that they arrested has gone to jail. That's about all that I know. I know they've got hundreds and hundreds of arrests, but I haven't seen I wish Dan would put in his post, and they've been, thrown in jail. He never says that. He just says we found him and arrested him. So anyway, they are out there doing a good job. Trump, of course, says he's going to send the National Guard into Chicago. Of course, I'm sure the Democrats are going to try to block that. I tell you, the more I learn about Democrats, the more I think that they're demons. You got a Democrat friend, I'm telling you, they might have some satanic qualities to them. I mean, by the way, let's get the first video out of the way. This is, because I did want to, let's hit on Israel for just 1 second. This is a video by George Galloway, and I thought he did a really good job. Now, right after October 7th, but a couple of years ago, when Hamas attacked, I don't know if you saw the photos, but there was the area where all the college kids were partying, and all the cars were just obliterated. And George points out, and at the time, everybody was pointing this out, that those cars had been shot from above. The Hamas didn't have helicopter gunships. So everybody says that was the Hannibal directive, and that Netanyahu killed all his own people. Let's watch that video from George Galloway. It's only a couple minutes.
That's not even contested anymore, Peter. Of the people who perished on October 7th, a huge number of them were Israeli military personnel, and at least half, I'd argue much more than half, were killed by the Israeli military. And the Hannibal directive was again put into practice in Gaza this very week when the resistance took new prisoners of war in Gaza City. The Hannibal directive was again activated, and the troops were ordered to ensure that no hostages made it into captivity, but that they were killed along with their capturers without delay. Now, we don't know what the outcome of that was. I haven't heard whether any prisoners were actually taken, but it was obvious to me on October 7th. I know something about military. I'm not one of these pacifists that doesn't know an Enfield rifle from a Kalashnikov or doesn't know the arse end for the front end of a tank. I know about war. I've been in wars. I've been lying with my face in the dirt trying to avoid the cascading, razor-sharp, red-hot metal exploding from bombs and so on. I've seen people's guts torn to pieces by ordnance. So I know something about war. And as soon as I saw the car park with all those cars destroyed and the people in them, and as soon as I learned that the cars themselves had been buried, not just the people that had been in them, but the cars themselves were buried, I knew why they had been buried. They had been buried because they bore the unmistakable evidence that they had been destroyed from the air by helicopter gunships, and the Palestinian resistance don't have any helicopter gunships. So a huge number of those who were killed on October 7th were killed by the Israeli military themselves.
Okay, so there's that. The other person I've been telling you that's doing a fantastic job is Robert Kennedy. And I don't know, I'm sure you probably heard some of the clips of him on Capitol Hill, but, I wanted to point something out to you. You've got and by the way, I think a lot of these Democrats that have been elected, I believe that those are illegal, or they've done it by cheating, okay? Because otherwise, I can't explain how somebody like Elizabeth Warren can get elected again and again unless she's rigging the ballots, because people can't be that stupid to elect this woman. And I got it to figure, I think it was she's worth $63 million. And and as Kennedy keeps pointing out, she's in the pocket of Big Pharma for sure. So and a lot of Congress is in the pocket of Big Pharma. But the other amazing thing that they're finding is that like the Clinton Foundation, they were getting a lot of money from China. Evidently, China has bought off a lot of our politicians. Well, we know that Biden was in China's pocket, so the whole Biden administration probably was just about in China's pocket. But there's a lot of other politicians. I mean, that's treason, I mean, so there's a lot of foreign money that goes into Congress, and they take it no problem. I can't imagine what it's going to be like when they die. I mean, I can't believe you can get to heaven and commit the crimes. I mean, just buying forced sex, child trafficking. I mean, that seems to me that puts you right in hell. I mean, that's the only place I can think of that you would end up for doing something like that. But let's watch a couple of clips of Kennedy on Capitol Hill. Let's get the first clip out of the way.
I'll just tell you one example, and I could sit here and give you thousands. But in 2002, CDC did an internal study of Atlanta, Fulton County, Georgia children, and looked at children who got the MMR vaccine on time and compared those to kids who got them later. So in other words, kids who got them before 36 months and kids who got them afterward. The data from that study showed that Black boys who got the vaccine on time had a 260% greater chance of getting an autism diagnosis than children who waited. The chief scientist on that, Dr. William Thompson, the senior vaccine safety scientist at CDC, was ordered to come into a room with 4 other co-authors by his boss, Frank DeStefano, who's the head of the immunization safety branch, and ordered to destroy that data. And then they published it without that fact. So you know that story, I know that story, and you know of hundreds of stories like that. It happens all the time. We are being lied to by these agencies, and we're going to change that right now. Yeah, the whole process was politicized. Senator, I mean, we were lied to about everything. We were lied to about natural immunity. We were lied to about, we were told again and again the vaccines would prevent transmission, they'd prevent infection. It wasn't true. They knew it from the start it wasn't true because that's what the animal studies and the clinical trials showed. We were told that there was science behind cloth masks. The CDC allowed the teachers union to write the order closing our schools which hurt working people all over the country, and then pretend it was science-based. All of these issues, and then I can show you, like, for example, Chairman Wyden was talking about me politicizing ACIP. During COVID, probably the most famous scientist on ACIP was Martin Kulldorff from Harvard, the great, world-renowned epidemiologist and vaccinologist. And he criticized the COVID booster mandates. They ejected him from COVID because he wasn't in the orthodoxy. The two biggest health officials at FDA during COVID, Dr. Gruber and Dr. Krause, criticized the Biden mandates, vaccine mandates. You know, President Biden said in August, I would never take that vaccine, the Trump vaccine. And he came in, he mandated it, and then he fired the two top health officials at FDA who said, hey, this thing has not been properly tested. So the whole process was politicized, and even today.
So let me, in 15 seconds.
You know, I say I'm not anti-vaccine. Saying I'm anti-vaccine is like saying I'm anti-medicine. Well, I'm pro-medicine, but I understand some medicines harm people. Some of them have risks. Some of them have benefits that outweigh those risks for certain populations, and the same is true with vaccines. And we don't understand the risk profile because vaccines are the only medical intervention, medical device, or pharmaceutical drug that are exempt from pre-licensing safety studies. And so there are two hepatitis vaccines, and one of them had a safety study that lasted for 4 days on 143 kids for a product that's going to be given to 76 million kids. Yeah. The risk profile prior to the introduction of the vaccine, the risk of a baby dying from hepatitis B was 1 in 7 million. That means you need to give 7 million hepatitis B vaccines to prevent one death if you're going to give 7 million.
So, Mr. Secretary, and I guess before the press labels me wrong, I'm not anti-vax either. I think MMR's been a great vaccine. The DPT's been a great vaccine. Polio's been a great vaccine. Smallpox. So there are great, but it's the measured approach that we're after, the transparency you're trying to empower.
So that was him in that clip. You can see that, you know, all they're trying to do is, you know, put him on a gotcha moment. Now, another thing that I learned, I didn't know about this, is, you know, these questions that these senators ask, they're too stupid to come up with their own questions. They actually, the lobbyist, the pharmaceutical companies or the pharmaceutical lobby actually writes the questions that they ask of Kennedy. And I didn't know, it makes sense. You know, if you're going to be up there collecting money from all, you know, the Israeli lobby or the China or whoever, you know, naturally they're going to give you the script that they want you to follow. So that's something that I found interesting. And by the way, AOC, she's gotten pretty damn wealthy. So, you know, she's corrupt as hell. I don't think, is there a single Democrat that's not a multimillionaire? I mean, I don't think there is one. Now, there are a couple of Republicans. I don't think Massey is on the dole. I don't think Rand Paul's on the dole. You know, so we do have a couple of good Republicans up there. All right, let's get the second clip of Robert Kennedy out of the way.
Senator, you know, this morning I got the latest numbers from CDC that 76.4% of Americans now have a chronic disease. This is stunning. When my uncle was president, it was 11%. In 1950, it was 3%. Today, it's 76.4%. 8 out of 10 of our kids cannot qualify for military service. This is a national security issue. When my uncle was president, we spent 0 on chronic disease. Today, we spend $1.3 trillion. It's the biggest cause, it's increasing. And all of the arguments that Republicans and Democrats have about single payer, Obamacare, or the various ways to allocate the health dollars, they're all like rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. If we don't end this chronic disease, we are the sickest country in the world. That's why we have to fire people at CDC. They did not do their job. This was their job to keep us healthy.
Thank you,
and
Mr.
I need to fire some of those people to make sure this doesn't happen again.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I have to cut myself off to make sure.
You're seeing this on Capitol Hill right now
play out in real time the great powers of the oligarchs that run healthcare in this country. Big pharma, big medical, the big insurance companies. This is the finance committee. I'll keep that in mind. This is the finance committee. They really have the overall. That was the first committee that Bobby Kennedy went to for his in his confirmation hearing. Remember, we played the confirmation hearings. Just harken back to that, because they're going to throw that up in his face every day about how he changed these committees. And Dr. Malone, runs this, was it ASIP right now? And they said, oh, you promised you wouldn't change it. And you've changed it and gotten all the hacks off it and put other people on it. And firing a CDC. Bobby Kennedy came out at the beginning breathing fire. And what did he say? Hey, America, the stats are off the charts. We've been getting sicker every year. CDC's in charge of that. Those 4 people had to go, and he fired them, as he has the ability to do. And he fired the head of CDC also.
All right, so that's another clip of Kennedy. We'll add to the video, but I really want to get to the reading that I found one of the most interesting posts. It's kind of disturbing, really. I mean, you're going to be, no, that didn't really, but yeah, I remember studying the history books, and basically what the post is going to be about is eugenics, and and of course with Trump talking about bringing back the insane asylums, I'm not sure that's a good idea. He did sign the executive order in the last video. I told you that naming it the War Department. I was against that, but anyway, I think that sends a bad message to the world that now we're all about war, huh? I'm more about peace. All right, so we'll get to that post here in just a minute. All right, before we get to the reading, there was one other theme I wanted to hit on, and we'll just start. This is now, if you didn't know, I'm a huge fan of Dmitry Medvedev. I just think he's one of the best trolls on X. Got a really good sense of humor, but this is a video by him talking about the Europeans. Let's watch that now.
Это чушь собачья, значит, ересь такая, то, чем они занимаются, или, выражаясь на английском языке, это bullshit, или просто shit, как угодно называйте. Вот они собираются и рассуждают на тему того, какие гарантии дать этой самой Украине. А они сами себе что-то там придумывают, вытаскивают из разных мест, потом предъявляют это в качестве гарантий. Никаких последствий это иметь не будет.
Okay, so in that theme, the reason why I wanted to play you that video is that I've been posting on X that Trump should get the Nobel Peace Prize because he has brought North Korea, Iran, China, India, Russia, and a whole bunch of other nations together in an economic alliance. So, I mean, who would have ever thought that India and China would be getting along so great? And then, of course, Russia and China getting along. And then you got to throw Iran into the mix. I mean, it's, or of course, Brazil. I forgot about Brazil. They're part of the alliance too. So Trump's brought them all together. so that's quite a, but the reason I was hitting on that is because the Europeans just sent another 1.3 billion of the Russian assets to Ukraine. Now that's stealing Russia's money, okay? So, Russia had, before the special military operation, they had a lot of money in the European banks. And then, of course, with the sanctions, they locked up all that billions and billions. It's like, I don't know, 600 to 800 billion. They locked that money into the banks and wouldn't give it to Russia. Well, they've been taking the interest from the money, but now they're actually taking the principal. Now, why am I talking about this? Well, that's going to make China, Russia, Brazil, all the BRICS nations run even faster to get away from the dollar. So you see, the West is its own worst enemy. When you start stealing another country's money, the world, they're going to say, we don't want to put our money in those banks. I mean, would you? If you looked at your bank account and half your money was gone, you wouldn't be banking with that bank no more, So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out and talk about that for just a minute. We're just about to where we're going to do the reading. So we'll get there in just a second.
If there was no harm, you can make the case for let's give it to everybody and we'll save some lives. But unfortunately, nothing could be further from the truth. A reanalysis of Pfizer and Moderna's trials published in the journal Vaccine by some of the most eminent independent of industry influenced scientists in the world, including the associate editor of the BMJ, Peter Doshi, revealed that from the very beginning, the rate of harm from the original trials of Pfizer and Moderna reanalyzed, you were 2 to 4 times more likely to suffer serious harm from taking the COVID vaccine than you were to be hospitalized with COVID. Think about that for a second. What does that mean? It is highly likely not a single person should have been injected with this, what is better described as a gene therapy than as a vaccine. Now, this isn't the only bit of data. Lots of data has emerged since then. And as you've probably heard a few weeks ago, Robert Kennedy Jr., and I've been in constant communication with him, has ended in $500 million worth of investments in the mRNA technology for vaccines, which is a great achievement, I think, for him to do that. His chief medical officer, Stephen Hatfill, told Steve Bannon, he was involved in this, he called it a mega-analysis of all the data, hundreds of studies, peer-reviewed studies showing the harms of the mRNA vaccine, and he said the side effects of this gene therapy was so enormous and progressive, it was difficult to fathom. The millions of molecules of mRNA entering the cell is creating biochemical havoc, it's disrupting protein metabolism, it's interfering with tumor suppressor genes, it had to be stopped. Interfering with tumor suppressor genes, in other words, it may be a risk factor for cancer. And I've been asked today to share, this isn't just his opinion, many other doctors feel the same way, but one of Britain's most eminent oncologists, Professor Angelish, said to me to share with you today that he thinks it's highly likely that the COVID vaccines have been a significant factor in the cancer of members of the royal family. What I'm telling you today is nobody is immune to medical misinformation because of this corrupted system. So let me...
All right, this is a post by Lauren Lee, and I just thought this was very, very interesting. Is the CDC a death cult? RFK Jr.'s firing of Susan Monores exposed what's been hiding in plain sight for hundreds of years. Just as 100 years. A much darker agenda of eugenics, sterilization, and depopulation. The mask is filing down. This is war, and it's spiritual. And this is really an interesting post. Let's see. All right, so the first one here, it says, last week, RFK Jr. fired Susan Monores, head of the CDC. His comments spoke to this agenda exactly. CDC has on its website today that among the top 10 greatest medical accomplishments in history was abortion, because it keeps small families, Floridian, giving kids a toxin and vaccines. And let's watch that video of RFK right now. All right.
I certainly consider mass shootings a health crisis, and we are doing for the first time real studies to find out what the etiology of that is. And we're looking for the first time at psychiatric drugs. You know, these kind of mass shooting, people have had guns in this country forever. When I was a kid, we had shooting clubs at our school. Kids, my classmates, other people, would bring a .22 rifle with their guns to school and park it in the parking lot. Nobody was shooting. So there's never been a time in America, in the history of humanity, and people walked into a crowd, into a church or a movie theater or a school or a crowd of strangers and just started randomly shooting. It's happening in our country. It's not happening around the world. And there are many other countries that have comparable levels of guns that we have in this country. We had comparable levels in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and people weren't doing that. Something changed, and it dramatically changed human behavior. And one of the culprits we need to examine is whether the fact that we are the most over-medicated nation in the world And a lot of those are psychiatric drugs that have black box warnings on them that warn of suicidal and homicidal ideation. So we are doing those studies right now for the first time, and we will have an answer.
Let's keep going. Abortions, mass poison, federal mandates, these are top priorities at the CDC. And when you pull at this thread, you unravel a horrifying story. The people in charge seem to want more death, not life. So what's going on? This is RFK on the CDC's website right now that they list the 10 greatest advances in medical science, and one of them is abortion. And we got another video.
Today on CDC's website right now, they list the 10 top advances, the 10 greatest advances in medical science, and one of them is abortion. Another is fluoridation, another is vaccines. So we need to look at the priorities of the agency. If there's really a deeply, deeply embedded, I would say, malaise at the agency. And we need strong leadership that will go in there and that will be able to execute on President Trump's broad ambitions.
Yeah. All right, let's keep going. It might sound insane, but CDC's roots are in eugenics. Before it was the CDC, it was the U.S. Public Health Service, which engaged in some of the most horrifying eugenics experiments of all time. Now, I knew about the eugenics experiments, and a lot of that was that's why I hit on the insane asylums earlier. So, but let's just keep going because it gets even worse here. For decades, USPHS ran programs that sterilized over 60,000 people deemed unfit. Targets included African Americans, Native Americans, Latinos, and the poor. We got a picture there, of course. This wasn't fringe. In 1927, the Supreme Court's Buck versus Bell upheld sterilization laws. Justice Holmes famously wrote, "Those generations of imbeciles are enough." The ruling was never overturned, and we have a picture of the ruling right here. So check that out. I can't read it, but I'll read it later. Then came the Tuscany, 1932, 1972. Hundreds of black men deliberately left to die so that public health could study their untreated syphilis. And it's got a picture of a black guy here. I did not know about this. I mean, I knew that that Fauci was doing HIV experiments on black children, but I didn't know that he was doing this, or that this took place. That was before Fauci. Then nearly 42% of Native American women were sterilized without informed consent. And we got a picture there. But this is the CDC now. I mean, my God, RFK, there's some satanic people in there. By 1968, 1/3 of the women in Puerto Rico were also sterilized in federally backed programs. And we got a picture of with the genocide on the left. And let's not forget the demon Anthony Fauci committed heinous crimes against foster children, subjecting them to inhumane HIV scientific experiments. Children were dosed with experimental drug cocktails, inducing organ failure, rashes, stunted growth, agonizing pain, and death. And when the helpless babies resisted, doctors restrained them. They forcibly inserted feeding tubes to continue pumping drugs in.
This is seen as a completely new disease, but it's not really. I mean, it's another viral respiratory disease, and we know quite a lot of them. And we know that can vary, but they vary not to just anything. I mean, they are reasonably constant. So to say that we knew nothing is not right.
Right. I mean, this whole concept that was part of inducing fear was to say this was the novel coronavirus, and this newness was as if we knew nothing about anything, including other coronaviruses or basic biology, all kinds of things that it was very difficult to fight off. I mean, I still don't understand how much, if anything, was political in the beginning, particularly in the U.S. during a campaign season, but obviously worldwide, it wasn't due to that. It was something else.
Yeah.
Well, did you feel that Sweden's population was extremely fearful, or what was the general mood of the public?
No, I think they were less fearful than many other countries. I had some interesting meeting with the Nordic Council afterwards, who went around to the different countries to discuss and follow up on the pandemic. And their distinct impression was that people were a lot less fearful in Sweden than they were like in Norway, Finland, and Denmark. And probably because our message was different. We can handle this if we work together. And sometimes when I come out and talk about this, they say that the difference in Sweden was maybe partly because we talk to the population like they were adults, not children that you need to sort of tell, don't go there because you're going to get hurt. Instead of
to me, this is one of the most fundamental lessons from COVID. And in fact, is completely contrary to what I saw in Washington at one of the task force meetings. And I've written about this publicly, it's not news, but I can't get out of my head that I was sitting across from Anthony Fauci, and this was in August of 2020, and he looked at me and he said, one of the biggest problems is the American public is not afraid enough. And I said, I just sort of said, can you just repeat that? This is at a task force meeting. And he said it again, and I mean, this is completely unethical way to do public health.
Yeah, and it's not very effective, we know that, because people who are afraid, they don't do logical things.
Right.
But if they have good information, good knowledge, I mean, people are not stupid. They can sort of understand, okay.
It seems so easy listening to him. It's as if, and this was so obvious, which I actually thought was one of the frustrations for those of us who also thought it was obvious on what to do. But that's not how the world was reacting.
We got a picture of that. And I don't know if you also knew that Fauci experimented on dogs. Horrible experiments. Wanted to see how many bee stings they could handle and stuff like that. I mean, Fauci, how in the world he's still free? I don't even understand. Why hasn't he been arrested? Now, Trump has said that the auto-pen pardons are probably illegal. Okay, well, let's test that theory. Arrest that bastard, and let's see what the courts do. Let it go to the Supreme Court. At least that little short demon will be in jail for a little while, huh? Wouldn't you love to see that? I know I would. I mean, I borderline on hatred for Fauci. I really do. Years ago, I remember back in 2020, I was making fun of him then, even during the lockdowns, and that was before I knew everything about Fauci. All right, so this is it. Today, it seems little has changed. RFK Jr. has already revealed the truth about multiple programs designed to disable and harm children. Mercury was injected into babies for decades. Fluoride, now proven to lower IQ, is still pumped through our water. And aborted fetus death is celebrated, and it's the greatest achievement of the last several decades. So, by the way, I saw an article that Campbell's soup, I didn't realize they use artificial dyes in the soups. So they've agreed that they're going to remove the dyes, the synthetic dyes from the soup by 2026. Is all our food poison? I mean, it seems like every time I turn around, there's an artificial dye, fluoride in the water. I mean, M&M's got artificial dyes in them. What was the other thing that he got out of the food? I can't remember. Yeah, you got, oh, by the way, what was Bill Gates doing in the White House? He's another demon. You know that he was part of the whole Operation Warp Speed. He made billions and billions of dollars off of the vaccines, and he pushed them all around the world. He was part of the WTO, or not the WTO, the World Health Organization, the WHO. He funded that. So I can't believe it. And there he is sitting, right next to Melania Trump in the White House. I mean, Trump, man, you're bringing in some really evil people around you. Despite a 2012 study by Protecting Black Life claimed that 79% of Planned Parenthood's surgical abortion facilities were located within 2 miles of neighborhoods with higher than average Black or Hispanic populations. Abortion continues to be pushed by the agency. Black women get 4 times the number of abortions that white women do. Policymakers know this. Then came 2020, the world's greatest crime against humanity, mandating a shot that was knowingly injuring and killing unknown amounts of people globally, particularly children. Reports show that what Biden's admin knew about myocarditis in February of 2021, but purposely waited until June to warn people of the mild heart damage. The result has been millions of afflicted families, all of which are still without compensation. And we got a New York Post, I can read it. It says, starting in February 2021, federal health agencies had been alerted to larger reports of myocarditis in young people who received the Pfizer vaccine, but waited until the June of that year to adjust the vaccine labels to make that side effect known. Even though CDC and FDA officials were well aware of the risk of myocarditis following COVID-19 vaccination, the Biden administration opted to withhold issuing a formal warning to the public for months about the safety concerns, jeopardizing the health of young Americans, the 54-page interim report said. Unbelievable. And then when pushed to release the data on myocarditis, CDC covered it up. They redacted 100% of it. Remember this, and we got a video.
Then I want to know, wait, what might have been there that they needed to redact? Disheartening, disgusting, and lots of other words. But then it gets better. It just keeps, wait, there's more. It just keeps happening. The CDC redacts every single word of a 148-page study on a myocarditis after COVID vaccination. So I asked research to print the study for me. 148 pages. The entire thing is redacted. What good does a study do if there's nothing there? Then I want to know, wait, what might have been there that they needed to redact?
There you go. Who covered up that data and why? Well, strap in. This is where the actual Satanism enters the chat. I wish I was joking. The person in charge of the National Center for Immunization and Respiratory Diseases, Dr. Dmitry Daskaliskis, would be responsible for clearly articulating the risks associated with any recommended or mandated vaccines. Unfortunately, he was a little busy dressing up as the devil, engaging in illicit sexual activity and posing for risque photo shoots. He is a self-proclaimed Satanist, and we got a picture of him right here. Unbelievable. I told you this was a disturbing thread. After resigning last week, Dmitry lamented the lack of objective science under RFK Jr. I am unable to serve in an environment that treats CDC as a tool to generate policies and materials that do not reflect scientific reality and are designed to hurt rather than improve the public's health. Despite specifically rejecting objectivity in the post, one person's idea of risk is another person's idea of a great Friday night. This is a video of him.
Intentionally, and making sure that we get the word out in a way that supports people's joy as opposed to, calling them risky. So I think, one of the things to think about is that, one person's idea of risk is another person's idea of a great festival or Friday night, for that matter. So we have to sort of intentionally, and making sure that we get the word out in a way that supports people's joy as opposed to, calling them risky. So I think, one of the things to think about is that, one person's idea of risk is another person's idea of a great festival or Friday night, for that matter. So we have to sort of...
All right. Okay, it's a long thing. The man advocating for orgies was in charge of your child's vaccines. As above, so below. What kind of culture not only allows a man like this to work in their institution, but to lead it? And we got a picture. Is that a disturbing picture or what? Oh my God, I'm telling you, this is the CDC. That's why we're dealing with something far more sinister than a profit scheme. This is clearly an agenda that treats human life as disposable, controllable, and unnecessary. And who ultimately is to blame? There's so much to expose here, way more than I could put on X. I'll be publishing my full report soon. The players, the population control agenda, and the deeper ties to global networks of power. Sign up, and they got the link right there to see it first. Excellent, excellent thread. Well, that's it for the video today, unless I think of something on the way back to the car. Peace out. Stay free. All right, I did think of a couple of things like I always do on the way back. So the Justice Department has put forward an idea to ban weapons from certain transgender folks after that shooting of two kids by that trans person. Now, of course, I'm totally against that. But, Chad Benson, I was just listening to him, and, he had a good slant on that. Because if the left pushes back and says, no, they should keep their guns, that means the left is for the Second Amendment. Or if they admit, or they say that, yeah, it's okay to take away from the guns, then they're admitting that gender, dysphoria, is a mental condition. So, either way, it's a win-win, kind of, in a certain kind of way. Dagnabbit, there was one, the other piece of news, I don't even know if you saw it. Gold, good Lord, just hit $3,600. Now, silver is still hovering around 41. So, if you looked at silver to gold ratio, silver is still your better buy. But man, 3,600. That tells you how fast the dollar is devaluing. And, I still wonder if we do have any gold. Germany and I can't remember, might have been Italy. They've been asking for their gold back from New York, and New York won't give it to them. So we never got that audit of Fort Knox. So do we have any gold? I wonder.
This is absolutely insane. Do you understand? I've been on the phone for an hour now, getting sent every which way, and this patient's had an approval for over a month, but hasn't been able to try to even sign up for the assistance to get her medication. You understand, but what's the resolution? Just sending me to another department where it's offshore and I have to ask for someone onshore? Like, this is absolutely insane. You would think you guys would be worried about public relations with how your guys' media is going right now. Like, seriously? Can I speak to a supervisor? I don't want to be sent anywhere else. I need to speak to somebody that has access to multiple areas at your company. This is so dumb. I need a supervisor. Yeah, I'll just talk to a supervisor. Nope, it's been an hour already. Nothing better to do.